So get this, podcast listeners. The media loses their minds at a Pence press conference. Yes. So Mike Pence, Vice President of the United States, has a press conference about coronavirus. And the task force is with him, and they're talking about vaccines. And the fact that we now have 2 vaccines that just are waiting for approval from the FDA, and once they are approved, and we hope to expedite approval, obviously, is what Pence says, once they are approved, they will be widely distributed and available. Obviously, they will be made available to folks who are at high risk first, but I'm sure even before that, to people that work in hospitals and doctors and anyone who's a first responder. Makes perfect sense. But nonetheless, that's 2 companies so far. So Pence has a press conference, and he's talking about this incredible achievement, right? This incredible achievement. Because when you think about it, think about all of the other kinds of viruses that are out there that we haven't been able to find a vaccine for that is 95% effective, let alone effective at all. And they did this. The Trump administration worked with the private sector, and they did this in less than a year. It's unbelievable. It's an extraordinary accomplishment, and it demonstrates something really positive when government knows its proper role and works with the private sector and creates competition between companies to see who can not just get the first vaccine, but also who can invent the best vaccine. That is what the Trump administration did. So Pence has this press conference, and then at the end of the press conference, the media goes insane. Not about the vaccine. They go insane about the fact that the Trump-Pence administration is challenging the election. I mean, they've lost their minds. Listen to this. Listen to this clip. We have it, and here it is.
And we will get through this together.
Mr. Vice President.
Thank you all.
Mr. Vice President. Are you really not going to take questions? All of you need to answer this.
Why is the federal government...
What is going on? You're not working with the transition. You're all part of not recognizing democracy. You're all undermining the democratic election. Every one of you.
Why is the federal
and you won't work with the transition.
Can you believe that? That's at a press... This is the United States of America. It sounds like a banana republic. You're undermining democracy. You're undermining democracy. I mean, why do you think you're doing this? You're crazy. You're undermining it. This guy, obviously, he's an alleged journalist, clearly never really took a true course in journalism and doesn't even know what the right question is to ask, which is maybe, hey, Mr. Vice President, thanks for the information on the vaccine. I have a question about your challenging the election. Do you think this falls within the constitutional parameters that you're challenging the election itself? And then give Pence an opportunity to respond. Maybe pull out the Constitution of the United States while you're at it and read it, because clearly this president, like any president before and after, have every right to challenge the validity of an election and taking their concerns to court, obviously. But nonetheless, the media has lost their minds. I mean, you heard them. I mean, that is not what a normal person does. It's not what a normal country does. But and that, by the way, was at a press conference about vaccines, about something that is so game-changing so that we can get our lives back to normal. We want to get back to normal. Every American does, no matter what your party affiliation. But nonetheless, the media has lost their minds because they don't want Trump to get credit for these vaccines. We don't want to give him credit for it because then he might be an historical figure. He might be like a really important figure. We can't do that. We must wait and get Biden in there right away so we can give him the credit for the vaccines. Oh yeah, right. Biden, he just turned 78. I mean, the man can barely finish a sentence. So just to prove that the media has lost their minds about trying to not give credit to Trump and Pence for their coronavirus task force and finding a vaccine and working with the private sector to do just that, MSNBC's Joy Reid actually decides to fact check, except her fact checking is, of course, wrong. I mean, once again, where did you get your degree from? You know, the bubblegum machine? So that's what we used to say, by the way. So here's MSNBC's Joy Reid literally fact-checking the fact that the Pence press conference is wrong, that the fact that we had these vaccines, it's not from Trump Pence, and it's not even from Pfizer or Moderna. No, she fact-checks them. You got to listen to this. Here it is.
So while Republicans are busy demanding freedom from masks, they apparently could care less about the 248,000 Americans who've lost their lives to the virus. And they accept no responsibility for any of it. In fact, believe it or not, they think they deserve credit.
This vaccine truly is the light at the end of the tunnel, and it's made possible by the commitment of the Republican majority in the Senate and this administration and our efforts to focus on Operation Warp Speed.
Operation Warp Speed has been a tremendous success for this administration. I do want to give a shout out to the Trump administration for making this possible.
It looks to me like the Speaker, the Democratic leader of the Senate, and former Vice President Biden all have the view that $2.5 trillion are nothing.
We will continue to have an open door, and we're ready to negotiate at a moment's notice.
I just want to fact check real quick and remind y'all that the companies themselves that are producing these vaccines were not involved in Operation Warp Speed and have said as much. So that's a lie.
Can you believe that? Joy Reid, at the end of those clips, Joy Reid from MSNBC, she fact checks, according to Joy Reid, she provides a fact check and says, no, Moderna and Pfizer were not part of Operation Warp Speed. I mean, literally, part of the stimulus was to provide money to these companies and incentives to be able to produce vaccines. So how did they do that? How did the federal government do that? How did Operation Warp Speed do that? They did that by saying, hey, we will buy the vaccine from you, the United States government will, so that we can make sure that everybody in the country has a vaccine. But here's the caveat. You, Moderna, and you, Pfizer, and all of the other companies who want to compete have to actually create and invent the vaccine. And if you do, the federal government will be your customer. In other words, you have a guaranteed customer of 330 million doses, not to mention the doses that you could sell overseas, right? So if you're a company and you're looking at this opportunity, you're saying, wow, I've got a guaranteed customer. You can't get a better customer than the United States federal government. That is the best customer you could possibly want because you know you're going to get paid. And they are literally signing a guarantee saying we're going to buy 330 million doses from you. And so you naturally get your people to work and you say, okay, all hands on deck. We are going to find a cure. We're going to find a vaccine. We're going to find something that saves lives so that the people in this country can get back to normal. That was all part of Operation Warp Speed. It made perfect sense. It was a beautiful coordination between the federal government and federal tax dollars and the private sector. And that was part of the entire Trump-Pence plan, brilliant plan, and now we have those vaccines. And what does Joy Reid say? Oh no, that wasn't part of it. I'm a fact checker. That was never part of Operation Warp Speed. This is how much the media has lost their minds. The media has lost their minds.